this is the reason why I love writing, is because I can create these characters, and maybe the world won't read them, but I'll read them, and I'll know what this guy's going to do to that guy, or what this lady's going to do to that lady. And that's satisfying for me to know that I made this world. So I think I don't know, there's probably a part of us that want to be creators. We want to create the world that we want, and maybe things like wrestling or films speak to that.
Danny, thanks for joining me, brother. It's awesome to finally connect with you after all of these years of, like, I don't know, we worked together like 10 years ago, and then we all kind of went different ways, and I guess we've been just chatting offline, keeping in touch with kind of on the social medias and stuff, but it's been like 10 years, man, and 10 years is a long time, eh? You've been on the grind, I've been on the grind, we're also older, so...
My hairline's... as my partner says, is going backwards. So, it's been 2 years, bro.
You know, the interesting thing about when we caught up, what were we? What was our role at Tvnz? We were like creative...
Junior creative producers, I think it was.
Creative producers, but I was already 33, right? So that's the hard case bit for me is I went into the meeting and they said, look, we really like you, Will, but there's nothing here. Would you consider taking a junior role? And I was like, hell yeah, because who doesn't want to get into making cool little movie promos and TV promos? And it's still one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, because you get to watch things all day. And whenever students or young people ask me, what should I do? I'm like, try and get into promos, because you get to be a writer, an editor, and all these other things, and it will ultimately lead you forward. But I mean, I thought we might touch a little bit on that, bro. But because we've only been together in the kind of work environment, I was keen to pick your brains. Firstly, about how you got into creative. What is it about your journey that led you down that path? Is that something that comes from family, or is this something where you kind of took a bit of a detour? And then secondly, like, where did you kind of grow up, and what was the story before I met you at TVNZ?
Wow, that's I guess.
And you've got 7 minutes 30.
Okay, cool. I guess getting into creative, I'd probably say in my family, my siblings will kind of attest this, but it's like I was the creative spirit. Even though my older brother was a comic artist, he was really into drawing and architecture and that. I'm the one, I felt like I was the one that pursued it a bit better. I think it was, I remember, I think the first movie I saw that made me want to get into the industry was Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship. And you recall, it was like the hype in New Zealand, right? Like it was the biggest thing. And this was pre-social media, pre-big internet, TMZ and all of that. Anything in New Zealand anything American that happened in New Zealand was like global news in New Zealand. Like, right? It was like lead story on TV3 or whatever it was. And so the hype around the country was Lord of the Rings, and The Fellowship dropped, and I watched it with the family at like one of the premiere events in Auckland City, and it lived up to expectation. It was an amazing film, and so much so that a couple of days later, me and my 2 older brothers, we went and watched it again, and then we stayed at the end of the film. Mind you, it was like a 3-hour film, but we stayed at the end of the film watching the credits, and I remember this, just sitting at the end of the movie and watching the credits. And I saw so many names, just scroll down, so many names that worked on this, like literally hundreds of names that worked on this movie. And I just looked at them and I was like, I want to be one of those names, any one of those names. I don't care what the role is. I just want to be involved in whatever I just saw. I want to do that. And so that was, I guess, the Kickstarter for that. And then went to high school, didn't do so well in high school. Upon leaving high school, I just didn't really have any options. I knew in the back of the mind I wanted to pursue some type of creative arts. And there was a lot of other things that happened after that.
Of course.
Which kind of led me back to the path of going to film school, which happened later on. That was pretty much, I guess, the initial Kickstarter was Fellowship, I'd probably say, yeah.
Isn't it amazing, like that a journey can be kind of like guided by these moments, and
Yeah.
and it's not kind of, and it's not really clear, because I guess these films aren't made to, well, I guess they're made to inspire in some way, but they're ultimately made to make money, I guess. And the
Yeah.
kind of nice back burner is that if you get a special mixture, of a bit of luck and a bit of care and a bit of solid intent, that it actually has another job, which it's like this inspirational moment, or look, I don't want to get too cheesy, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but I've had that recently with sitting down with my little 2-year-old, and not anymore, but about for the last 6 months, pretty solid every day we watch Moana from Disney Plus, right? And
Hey.
every day it was like the morning story. I got up, we make the bottle, we sit down, then we watch this whole film. And I kept watching this thing until I started actually looking at what was happening, and I mean, 2 things struck me, is that they actually laid out a bit of a question, which was, what have we forgotten, and how can you get that information back? And I was like,
Yeah.
damn, that's still relevant. That's still relevant today. And then 2, the other bit that's kind of, I've watched, you watch. And then I kept seeing at the end, the shot, it's time to music. And she kind of sails forward, smile, boom, cut to black. And I'm like, no, that's not the end of the story, because that's actually a silly end, because you can't jump forward to now and say it all worked out, because it definitely didn't. And so, and then I'm like, dude, it's a film and you're up with your baby and it's cool, chill out. But films have this way of communicating. And so I guess, what is it communicating to, bro? What is that? Is it these, like, and I want to go deep on that, because what is this inspiration? Why is it Lord of the Rings that captured you? My other question is, if Lord of the Rings hadn't captured you, do you think there would be a surrogate?
Ooh. Well, I was always fascinated by film anyway. It was kind of my getaway. And so when you're when you come from a family that isn't necessarily wealthy, like a trip to the movie theater is like the biggest thing on the calendar, right? So, we weren't very rich at all. So any time that they could spoil me, it did happen. And it was usually through a movie. So it was kind of like, it was like it was a great occasion, and there was always great memories and fond memories around the movie experience, and then just going there and watching whatever it was at the time, Aladdin, Lion King. I'm a big Disney kid. I'm a big Disney fan. I grew up on that. But just even like some of the classic films too, of that era, I consider Independence Day classic. I like those big action blockbusters as a kid. But it's just, they act as timestamps for me, because it's like, I can remember when I went to that film because it was my cousin's birthday, and it was a great day. You know what I mean? And all the explosions and all the fanfare and all of that stuff. I remember Matrix, 99, going to Matrix. And I remember going in with my sister and her friend, and I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks whack. Like, I don't want to see Keanu Reeves. This guy was Bill and Ted. and then you watch the movie and you're like, holy shit. And I clearly remember the moment I was there. I was there with my sister and her friend, and we left the theater like blown away. We're like, I need to see this again. I need to go home and tell my brothers about this movie. So I think movies, even still, like, I probably would have found a surrogate. I just think the hype of Lord of the Rings at that time in New Zealand, and the fact that Kiwis were doing it on this grand level, was when I kind of realized that, I can do this too. Like, Wellington's literally down the road. And some of those people look like people I've seen before, which most of them are Shaun Street actors. So, it just made it all viable, I think.
That's awesome. Well, look, we'll go to a little break, but I think when we come back, what I'd like to explore is, there's one thing to be inspired and follow the dream, right? And I feel like the world's really good at saying, follow your dreams and you can be anything. I think the world also, maybe that's where the kind of creative and the movie fan, they have an insight, like I've said it before, but it wasn't clear that Indiana Jones was going to win. He had to come over a lot of things. He had to, there was a lot of obstacles, and I like to think of the 1,000 other versions of him that got stabbed with the arrow, that missed, that didn't get crushed by the door. But the thing is, he did it, or the character did it. And I like the idea that for me, that represents hope. That represents the reason that you shouldn't give up, because most likely you're not going to make it, but if you dare to dream or go for it, you will. And I guess the interesting thing about that, not getting too motivational, is that we're on that journey. We're all on that journey. There's no guarantees that we make it, that we crack this thing. And I think that's kind of why it's so beautiful, because it's easy to talk to versions of us that have been there, done that. And I guess in some ways we are, right? We're in control of a certain amount. So I'd like to talk a little bit, bro, about like the inspirations there. We're plotting forward, we're navigating forward, but what are the kind of realities about that? So stay with us, team. Be back with Danny in just a sec. Cool, Danny, we're back. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the break, about the kind of, I was trying to frame it up, the realities of following your dreams, because, it's scary, right? And it ain't guaranteed. And we love to dream for more, but the realities are sacrifice and the competition and all of that stuff. How's this journey been for you, bro? Do you allow yourself to think about, I guess, the creative industry, the amount of people that somehow find validation in chasing something, the importance, the perceived importance of it? I mean, not so much during COVID, because last thing I really want to think about is a celebrity, but definitely there's some mana attached to this idea of, I guess, being able to craft a narrative, right? It's a human, whoever controls the story controls, I guess, somewhat of reality. Yeah, bro, what's it been like for you plotting the path forward to, be your own boss, if you like?
It's been hard.
Yeah, man, good. I'm happy you say that.
Yeah, no, it's been stupid hard, but good hard. And I probably wouldn't have had it any other way. Film school was a grind. I went to film school. I went to Unitech in Auckland, and it wasn't present, but it just felt like Islanders weren't supposed to make it. And so in my first year, there was about 12 Pacific Island students. And then oddly enough, in the third and final year, there was 4 of us left.
Right.
And then I had to kind of look at some of the circumstances as to why a lot of my peers didn't make it. A lot of them had kids. A lot of them had families. One had a court case. And it was just, you know what I mean? Like, it was just situations that are almost generational. And these were like little things that I could have fallen into too. But I really want this. Like, I really want this career to happen. That's why it's been 15 years still, me chasing the dream. But that's why I said it's hard. It's hard. And I don't find anything else more satisfying than when I create and make my own work. During that time at school, during uni, and even after when I graduated, I was doing the typical thing of working on the doors. I was a bouncer. I was a security guard, and then most days I'd be working in a factory packing boxes. And so I was doing the stereotypical island stuff, but at the same time, and this is to not discredit any of the people, the wonderful people, we need those people in those jobs. But when I was working in those roles, bro, I was dumbfounded. I was just like, what the hell am I doing with my life? And it's, even to this day, it's hard. Like, I still haven't made a feature film. A lot of my peers have, but it's one that I still wake up every day excited to pursue, even though it's been a tough road up. So yeah, I mean, but aside from that, the experiences that I've had in my career because I freelance now as a content creator, bro, I've been able to travel the globe off the back of that, and that's been fun in itself. So I've been able to tick a lot of bucket list things, except having my own films up. So that's kind of the next step for me. So, like,
I'm fascinated with this idea of, the journey versus destination, right? And I think we get caught in a little trap of, when I get there, it'll be sweet. And if you're listening to people, they never say that. They're like, it's a mo money, mo problem type thing. But I guess one question I have is, let's say we both have a version of, and let's say everyone watching thinks, man, if I can just get there, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm concerned about, though, is that we're all quite busy, right? This is part of the one-stop shop mentality. I can do a bit of this, I can do a bit of that. So what I've noticed is, for example, this podcast is the first dedicated New Zealand podcast on public television, right? But there was no song and dance. There was no celebration. There was no ticker tape parade. Will just went back to work. He kept watching Moana in the mornings, changing nappies. You know, you could say that he cracked it, right?
Yeah.
But when you're yourself, what you think about is, oh man, if I could get a bit of security now, if I could get 4 months ahead of the rent instead of, 1 week type thing, maybe then I could take time. So, and I actually don't think anyone will give you time. You're going to have to force the time to enjoy it. And I wonder if, when you make your film, do you think you'll be able to have time to firstly, enjoy it? Or do you think it's like, boom, the hammer's on, I've got to reply to this, that person was at the premiere?
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't really thought that far ahead. But I kind of know what you're talking about. It's like you kind of hit these points and you go, like, is this the be or end all? And I kind of expect that once I do make one, I know myself creatively, I won't be satisfied because I'm never ever satisfied. And I think that's just an artist thing.
Yeah.
But it's all I've really wanted to do was just to make these stories, irrespective of how I feel at that point of time, whether I crack it or not. I just want to tell them. It's the only thing I feel like I've ever been good at, and it's the only thing that genuinely makes me happy. and there is kind of even in my TV career or even content career, when I've worked with people and I've done amazing things, and that I'll never I can sit on that happiness for a little bit, but it's almost like a drug, bro. You have to revisit it again and do it again and do it even better. But that's I guess I'll address that issue once it happens, I guess.
Yeah, bro. No, well, it's interesting. It's fascinating, right? Because I guess for me, it always comes back to what are we chasing? Why are we chasing it? Who are we? What's the deal? What's the point of all of this stuff? And I guess some of those questions are big ones, but I still like challenging myself because I'm not a fan of things that get put down, condensed into kind of buzzwords or sentences. What's your why should be really powerful for me, but it doesn't mean anything to me. Finding happiness is the same thing. It's even drilling further down into having good mental health. We talk about it like we know what we mean, but it's like trying to explain Lord of the Rings in a buzzword. It won't work. You have to sit there and go through the ups and downs, and actually you realize that what Lord of the Rings is a conglomerate of this may happen, this may not, it nearly didn't, it kind of worked out, did it really, what happens next? And I kind of, I'm not sure that enough of us are willing to really explore that, which is why I think it's so cool to, talk with fellow creatives in this space, or in any kind of creative space, there's such joy that I get by doing this, and also by editing it. I get a second round of fun. I get to learn, I get to examine, and probably something like flow, where you go into time starts to, I don't actually feel the good bit of flow. I get the annoyance of people breaking my flow. Shush, you guys, you're too loud. But I actually don't care that they're loud or not in the family. It's just that I'm having such a good time in this little dopamine-filled world, bro. So, and it's hard to explain. Is that how it is for you, man, when you're making your stuff, where you're filming and writing and cutting? Do you kind of go into connection with it?
It's a weird one too. And now that I'm freelancing, I've been freelancing for the past 3 years now. And so the onus is on you to, for the most part, to meet these deadlines or work on these projects. And that could be kind of tricky. So, because once you work in the TV buzz, there's quite a rigid streamline of work to go through, as you know. But yeah, just in terms of creative flow, like I've been doing a lot more writing now. So what I studied at film school was screenwriting. It was writing for screen and theater, and that's what I graduated in. And so that was always kind of my goal, was to be a screenwriter. And so for the past 3 years, I've been writing a lot more. And I go through these weird little pockets of like, it's hard for me to. I'll spend most of my time just staring at a page, like a blank page with the idea in my head. And then I'll stare at it for like a good couple of hours, and then I'll go away and play video games. But then every now and then, and this is similar with my editing too, when I'm doing like fun stuff for myself, I'll hit a creative pocket and I'll be on it for like a good 5, 6, 7 hours straight, like no distractions. And even though it might read crap or look crap on first go, like it's, bro, it's like a high, right? Like you just, like, I feel great about it, and then it disappears, and I don't see it for a couple of days, and then I have to refine whatever I've got in front of me. But that's, I guess, the genesis for a lot of my my own projects, rather than the ones that I get paid for. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, I do get into creative pockets in that.
Yeah, and look, I will go to a quick break, but what I like is that people watching, they can get an insight, right? Because what I want to bring is conversations that expand the bubble, to different fields. And so, yes, a little bit for me is like, why are we doing our stuff? But the other bit is, what is it that when you enter into, that you're entering into, because I think one of the things that I always want to be a positive push for is really plot that path, like have a good navigation aim. I think this has helped people in the past, metaphorically and physically, but that takes time, to sit down and be inspired and to work out what the hell you love and what you don't, and then go for it, and that's what will, I think those, moments where you say you're in 7 hours of, this deep, intense relationship with the art, that helps you for the next 70 hours where it sucks, and somewhat like a relationship or something. Yeah, okay, stay with us, team. We'll be back with Danny in a second. Bro, one of the questions I had for you was the kind of one-stop shop mentality. It's something I think about quite often. You can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You have to be quite proficient with, say, audio recording, also capture, making sure that, I guess the technical is right, the lighting, the sound, like everything that people normally ignore until you muck up. And then it's highlighted for everyone to see.
Yeah.
Do you kind of like the magic trick part of it, where if you do your job well, people are taken on a journey, but there's almost no acknowledgement to the hard work you put in?
Wow, what a question. It's the finer details, it's the subtleties that a lot of people forget. And are you saying, do I enjoy that, or do I?
Well, put it this way. If Peter Jackson knew that he inspired you to push forward with your career, that's the buzz I think he would take away from it. But he might not know this. And that's a problem, in my opinion, because he laid out a magic trick almost that is so awesome that he will never know the awesomeness of it. And I just wonder, if we're surgeons, right, we get to statistically measure these things. I've helped this many people. I've fixed this. I'm amazing in these areas. But people will only come to us when there's something to fix.
That's a hard one. Like I don't think Peter Jackson set out to inspire. Like, I don't think his first goal was to inspire people.
Right.
It's just, I look at, like, I've come to a point in understanding now with myself that I really just want to impress myself.
It's awesome.
and I say that, and it sounds self-gratifying. It sounds selfish, but it's like, why am I doing this? Because I want to tell my stories. And if I'm not happy with my stories, then why am I telling it? And I feel someone like Peter Jackson and a lot of filmmakers, a lot of creatives, they have to be selfish. They have to service themselves first before they start recognizing everything around them. And when I'm hired to work for people, those elements come into play where it's about them. It's about the overall process. But if I'm writing my own story, if I'm working on my own project, then I've gotten to a point now, and it's taken me a good 15 years, that my voice and my reading of the story is the most important part before it goes to anyone else. But yeah, that's
I think that's a nice way of looking at it. And look, I try hard, and look, we're all trying to do this, not overgeneralize, but I will say, on average, some areas which I work through in real time is my mother, who's Cook Island, raised me in a way that to be polite first, right?
Yep.
And this has served me really well until I need to stand up to somebody, and then it's a challenge. And I wonder how you've dealt with this. How do you deal when you're dealing with a tougher personality, when you're dealing with, someone who is doing a bit of finger pointing? I'm almost 40, bro, and this is the one area of my life which, I have anxiety, because how do you tell someone, particularly above you, that you might not think they're as good as they're projecting?
We've come through the same system of broadcast, and then also the same system of upbringing too. And I like to think of myself coming into the game as this really nice, polite guy. And yes, that serviced me too, bro. But as brutal and as much as it sucks, you have to grow the cojones to tell these guys off and let them know. And I think it's made easier today because of technology, because of, we don't need to necessarily service the networks anymore. We don't need to service these production houses. There's so much technology at our disposal that, like I've got a cinema camera. I'm gonna film something at the end of the year, a short film, and I don't need the film commission to do it. It'll be nice to have $1 million, yes, but if you really, really want it, and you really, really want to tell your own story, there is a lot of opportunities to do that. And I've seen so many of my peers do that at the same time. And so, growing up Polynesian, that's our thing, bro. We grow up very respectful to our elders, the people above us. And I think a lot of us now have grown to a point where we got to understand that this ain't family, it's business. And we got to be able to differentiate between those. As much as in New Zealand, it kind of still has that sense of family in it when you're working in the industry. I've had friends come back from the States, tell me some horrific stories about working in the industry and just how brutal it is. And it's like, well, maybe we are a bit soft in New Zealand in that regard. We're definitely hard workers. We're very respectful people, but we have to draw the line as professionals too, and stand up for ourselves. So, but it took me a good couple of years to get over that, bro, because at TVNZ or the other networks I worked at, I did get run over a lot of times, bro. Like, I honestly, like, yeah.
No, but it's awesome that, because there's power in being able to kind of say, no, this isn't just admitting that we did. It's saying that we're acknowledging it and learning from it, because this is how I feel about it. And actually, I think there's true power in being able to do that and share that, right? It's not just about seeing the good versions of how it all plays out. It's like, it's the journey along the way, which is, why I'm trying to bank everything deep within on this, because if you can enjoy the journey, I think it helps you so much more than it'll be so good when we're there. I think about it like the people we went to school with who were like awesome then. And I don't know if this is true, but maybe people will have this feeling. The people who were the coolest at school, it's like they used up all of that awesomeness then.
It's that 50 Cent line, that damn homie. At high school, you were the man, homie. The fuck happened to you? It's that thing, bro. It's yeah. I get it too. Like, there was a lot of the jocks in that. They were supposed to be the next big thing, and you look at them now. It's not to degrade them, but it's just like, there is a sense of that sometimes.
We'll take a break, bro, and I'd love to come back and look. I guess just talk a little bit about where you see the future. I'd also like to chat a bit about your podcast. That's one of the things that's been popping up for me is these interviews you're doing, and I see them as kind of archival conversations, where really capturing some good stuff, bro. So yeah, stay with us, brother, and we'll be back in just a sec. Why'd you start the podcast? What was the genesis of that?
I was bored during COVID. Pretty much. No, like I've always been meaning to do one. I'm a massive Joe Rogan fan, Joe Budden fan. I listen to a lot of hip hop podcasts, massive hip hop fan. And then so about 3 or 4 years ago in my mind, I was like, there's not enough Pacific Island podcasts. And so I've been playing this in my head. And then COVID gave me time to actually work on some projects that I've been meaning to do because all my contracts got cut during that 3-month stint. And so I had time to myself, and then I figured to make the podcast, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a Pacific Island podcast. Started doing my research, and bro, there's so many, and they're all amazing. And I was like, oh, I haven't actually been listening to my own people.
Right.
And so it was a great opportunity for me to discover, like I knew you were doing your thing too, but there were so many others, like not just in New Zealand, but in Australia and America. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, how did I miss all of this? And it was out of ignorance, and it made me feel a bit sad. So I call my podcast like the racist podcast because I only talk to Polynesian Pacific Island people. And I've got a lot of friends over here trying to jump on it. I was like, no. You need a passport for that. So that's essentially what it was, bro. It was just it was having time off during COVID to put some thought into a project, and this became the project. And it was just to talk to a lot of the people on my podcast are good old friends. So whenever I call them, they sound like that anyway. So I just wanted to capture those natural conversations. And then the people that I don't know was just getting to know them, or people that I'm naturally fascinated by and want to explore.
Yeah, bro. It's an awesome hack, really, to get time with people too, right? Like, that's one of the things that I often tell people about podcasting is, you it's still, and it's getting kind of to the end of that tether, I think, but it's still this kind of, oh, yeah, I'll do a podcast. I'll jump on your podcast. Whereas if you said, hey, you got 5 minutes for a coffee? Oh, no, sorry, I'm too busy for that. But
that's a big one. Yeah.
There's this cool little bit of acknowledgement, which I think cuts to the very deepness within us, which is like, of course I want to have a chance to talk about who I am, and the beauty of the podcast though is it becomes this two-way relationship, where we what I love is we in real time trying to keep each other afloat, and it's a very human thing. I can imagine this happening around campfires or looking at the stars or something like that, which is, I'd like to try that one time. How do you do a podcast where you're actually outside and in nature, and if it still holds up, or because we are these kind of technological things now too, right? Like, I don't know how much you're doing on social and how often the phone is attached, but for me, man, it's like this parasite, and it's hard to know because we're on the real-time grind. I need this thing, something's happening, I need to capture that. And so I find myself, what don't I need to capture, and what is that balance between because I go through waves, like today I wanted to give a bit more love to this podcast, so I wrote out the intro to one of the podcasts coming up, and I'm like, I don't really like it, but it helps me then just winging it on the spot, but maybe I like winging it. It's like this, it's a war in your head, bro. But look, I will say I think it's a worthy one. It's a worthy war because ultimately, I guess by doing the podcast and reaching out to people and exposing ourselves, we're actually hopefully strengthening. Would you say strengthening who we are? And you and I can talk in any scenario now, right? We might not know all the answers. We might get a bit nervous at times, but I guess that's one of the things about. What was I listening to in one of your recent podcasts where you're talking? Who was the wrestler fella?
Oh, Tox Foley is a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
Tox Foley.
yeah.
Yep.
And you were talking about the doco you made and going around the place, and I mean, like the the our immunization to life or whatever that is. What is it called? The what's the bit in us that fights off the bugs? Our sorry, I've just gone blank.
Immune
It's
system? No, it's
immune system. Right. That
yep.
is immune system. The immune system we have to people and being able to connect and observe must be huge when you do. Like, what did you say in that podcast? You traveled to 4 different cities in Aussie.
4 nights. Yeah. So we did. So he hit me up to. We were good friends. We were already working on stuff on the side, and then so he commissioned me through his company to tour with them. New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is so there's WWE in America. There's New Japan in Asia. So it's kind of the Asian counterpart, or the opposite. And so they commissioned me to do a mini doco around with the group of guys they had in Australia. So it was like 4 nights, 4 different states, and 4 different wrestling shows. And it was such a crazy insight into their world. Like, I'm a massive pro wrestling fan from a kid, but I got to see what it was like up in person, and it was like so. Like, I was just in awe of these men just throwing each other around and then going to their hotel, flying out to a different state, and then doing it again. I was like, these guys are crazy. I'm not doing this.
Did you have full access to stuff?
Sorry?
Did you have full access to everything?
Everything. So yeah, I had backstage everything. I got to sit on one of the 2 of the wrestlers organizing their match. So it's got this what do you call it? So they know the outcome of it, and they just have to go through the process of getting to it. So it's kind of like a story. It's beginning, middle, end, and they talk about these key points, and then they just go out there and get a feel for it. And so I was having lunch at this buffet. Well, 2 of the top wrestlers in the company were talking about their match and how they were going to structure it, and it was just like so like bizarre to me, because as a kid you think it's real, and my heart shattered when I found out it wasn't. But then I'm sitting in this room listening to these 2 wrestlers talking about how they're gonna you throw me over there, and then I'll jump on top, and then that's when you grab a chair, and then maybe the fans might do something, and then I'll probably let one of the fans punch you in the face. And I'm like, this is so insane. Like, they're doing this right in front of me. And then I went and watched the match afterwards, and they did it to a T. And I was like, so amazing. They had the memory to call back to all of that and then go and perform it. But that's what a professional wrestler does. So it's like, it was so awesome to see that and play and document it. But I wasn't allowed to showcase that stuff. It was just what happened on the actual tour.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know, maybe I'll think about it later, but I can't help but feel that the space we're talking about is the kind of hybrid between reality and, fake, or not fake, but make-believe. Yeah. Yet it's all real, right? They really wrestle. It's just they had a bit of a plan, but it didn't change it for the people watching. Just like we know Frodo was an actor and all of these things, but it didn't matter. And I think I said it to you before, and I'll say it again. What is that talking to within us? What do you think it's talking to? Why do we have this need to believe? What is it?
I think it's escapism. It's a sad one, because it's not as if our lives aren't exciting enough if we don't make it. You know what I mean? But there's just a sense of us trying to, like, for me, wrestling was just fun because I wish I was The Rock. I think every Samoan kid did. But to see him on that platform, on that stage, rock all those crowds, it was kind of like, I wish that I was that guy. And it was just, I mean, we incorporate that into our storytelling. We try and, like, relive these emotions, these real emotions, but on a different plane, so to speak. Yeah, yeah.
So what you're saying is the pursuit, I'm not really saying this what you're saying, but one thing that popped into my mind is, I'm making this weekly podcast, trying to push my thinking out to make life a little bit more bearable, because if I really just sat down and realized that it's just another day, another dollar, you could probably quickly get to a spot where you're not happy, right?
I think so. I think that sums it up well. Like, yeah, I think that's it.
Damn, that's going to make me think for a while, because I would say that you should still pretend then that, and I use pretend on purpose, and I'll explain a little bit of what I'm thinking, but pretend it is this mystical thing. You know, just like when the Hulkster came out and did his thing, it's mystical, it's iconic, it's legendary. But to know that it's there so you feel like life is really out of it, to think, you know, that it is not real, but it's still needed, you know, it's the hope, maybe, you know, like,
it's strange. Like, I'm constantly exploring that with my work too. And is like, for me, there's nothing better than creating a piece of work, whether it's editing or writing, and then visualizing it. But the sucky part is that sometimes that might not get funded. But at the same time, I've gone through the process of living it. And like, this is the reason why I love writing, is because I can create these characters and maybe the world won't read them, but I'll read them. And I'll know what this guy's going to do to that guy, or what this lady's going to do to that lady. And that's satisfying for me to know that I made this world. So I think I don't know, there's probably a part of us that want to be creators. We want to create the world that we want, and maybe things like wrestling or films speak to that, probably. I don't know.
Well, and they did to you, right, when you went to watch Lord of the Rings. So there is a part of it that's real. It's not like you were sitting there thinking, I'm bored, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
It did talk to something. And one thing I was mentioning before is I've been dabbling a lot in learning breathing techniques better, so I can better understand. Like breathing is the only automated system that we can like tap into, and I think most people don't realize that that's for a reason. You can control a lot of the feelings you get through, you know, going back to these slow nasal breaths. But anyway, one of the things I'm fascinated with, bro, is that I'll hop in the ice bath, right? And I'll measure myself, because when most people think of the ice, they think of when you hop in. And so the goal, and this is, it's like pretending there's hope or pretending there's real cool things.
Right.
All I do is simulate calm, and I still get the benefit of calm. So I don't even have to actually be calm. I just have to pretend it or act it, you know? So when you act calm, even in the cold where you want to, my brain or whatever's happening up here, fight or flight, whatever, it thinks, you're calm. So I will enact the right chemical balance for your calmness.
That's crazy. Like, you know, breathing.
Yeah.
So that's like willpower, right? Like, you're just...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird for me to think about that you don't have to actually be calm. Simulating it's enough. And I wonder, I'm just trying to tie it in, because it feels like this to me here, that, you know, that yes, the blunt truth might be there might not be anything out there, but it's still worth maybe not believing, but pretending there is, because you get this cool thing, you know, you get the right, I don't know, maybe it's the dopamine, or, you know, the enjoyment, or the acknowledgement, or the thing that gets you through the really hard moment. Because I guess at its deepest level, man, we're missing something, in this modern world. Lots of people are very unhappy, and I'm sure people were always very unhappy, but so unhappy that it's not worth it anymore. And that's a whole different ball game for many.
Yeah.
You know, what is it exactly that we're missing? And maybe, you know, we're out of time, and everyone's like, oh, dude, what is it? And I was like, I don't know. We all don't know. No one really knows. And be wary of the ones who say they do.
Yes, be wary of those woke ones. Yeah, because I don't imagine, like you talked about it earlier, about when I reach that point of releasing a film, right? And whether that's going to satisfy me. I know for a fact that it won't, but it's going to be, for me, it's a milestone. And when I leave this place for good, I just want to make sure that my milestones can speak to generations before me. And that's enough for me to know whether it's a shit movie or not. It's just, it's been there, like Danny left his mark. And that's pretty much it for me. But yeah, it's that constant need and want of trying to get there. That kind of, a lot of my peers have fell by the wayside, and I don't blame them, because it is a hard journey. but I don't see me doing anything else really. So
Man, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a burden worth taking on. Danny, I want to thank you, bro, for joining us on the podcast and sharing a bit, just a bit. Let's do these more. I'm like convinced that this is the way forward, that we've got to capture this stuff and celebrate the wins and cry together about the crap stuff. And if we do that, you kind of give permission for people who, may not be, down this journey of, putting yourself out there, right? For people to like pick at and prod at and I said to my wife today, look, I've failed heaps, but I think what's cool about me, or this is the story I'm telling myself, the narrative is that I'll try again. Yep. So yes, you can. I'm vulnerable because I let people know it's obvious when it doesn't go well. They'll guard all that for them. And I was saying to my wife, I think that comes out in other ways for them. It comes out in a giant pool of crap. When they get revealed, it's Bill Cosby bad, right? I'll be letting you know my vulnerability. So short term, you can prod, any hole in me. You can use it against me, and good for that. But eventually, only one needs to be right, and it will be the one thing that gets right. That when you actually tie it back, it's the amount of that went wrong. So you're actually just navigating and learning while you're going. It's obvious to me. It's just not obvious when you're on the spot trying to explain it to people. So that's why I think it's awesome what you're up to, bro. It's like there's way easier ways to make money, right? There's way more secure ways, but as far as I know, everyone who trades security in for this idea of freedom is just up against it. Brother, where can people follow your journey if they want to connect with you, watch some of your work, listen to the podcast, or contribute?
Pretty hefty on Instagram, so it's _island_films. Someone else already took One Island Films, so One Island Films, you'll see it, and then there's One Island Podcast, which is just One Island Podcast. So that's all on Instagram, and then that kind of filters through to YouTube and Spotify.
Bro. Thanks so much for joining us, brother. It's been awesome to reconnect.
Thank you, man. Good to see you again.